Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking into a really worrying global mystery. Think about this. Hundreds of different kinds of amphibians, tiny colorful frogs, big toads, all sorts. They're just vanishing at this alarming rate. Scientists have been scratching their heads about it for decades now. And it seems the main suspect is this silent killer, a fungus called Batrachochytrium dendrobatidis. Bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, most people just call it build, pronounced BD, or sometimes Kittridge.
Right, Brader Kittridge, and it's just wreaking havoc on amphibians everywhere. It's really catastrophic.
It really is. And, this matters hugely, not just because we're losing these amazing creatures, though that's tragic enough. Amphibians, they play such a crucial role in ecosystems. They keep things in balance.
How so?
Well, they're key predators of insects, for one. But they're also really sensitive indicators,
Yeah.
like environmental health monitors. Their decline is a huge red flag about what's happening to our planet.
Okay, so it's a massive problem, but there's actually a twist here, isn't there? A potential bit of hope.
That's right. A really unexpected discovery.
Researchers have found a virus, and this virus actually infects the fungus itself.
Yeah, sounds like science fiction almost.
Totally. But this tiny virus might, just might, be the key to saving amphibians, and maybe even teach us how to tackle other big environmental threats down the line. So let's get into it.
Okay, let's unpack this crisis a bit more. The scale of devastation caused by this bead fungus. It's honestly hard to comprehend.
The numbers are just grim.
We're talking, what, probable extinction for 90 amphibian species directly because of this or contributed to by it?
At least 90. And severe declines in over 500 more species.
Wow.
It's one of the worst disease impacts on biodiversity ever recorded. 500, wow. So how does it actually, do this? How does the fungus attack?
It causes a disease called chytridiomycosis. Basically, it gets into the skin cells of frogs and toads and destroys them.
Their skin, why is that so deadly?
Because amphibian skin is incredibly important. It's not just a covering. They absorb water and electrolytes through it. They even breathe through it to some extent. So when the fungus damages the skin, they can't regulate those vital salts like potassium and sodium. It messes up their whole system.
Ah, okay.
Leads to electrolyte loss, which ultimately causes heart failure. It's not a quick process.
That sounds awful. Can you give us an example, something concrete? Like I read about the Panamanian golden frog, Atelopus zateki.
Oh, that's a heartbreaking one, yes. A beautiful, tiny, bright yellow. Well, technically a toad, but very frog-like.
Yeah.
Highly toxic, natives to Panama.
Used to be common there.
In certain areas, yes. That bright color was a warning. But now, it's gone. Extinct in the wild.
And that's directly because of brood.
Directly linked, yes.
Yeah.
A direct consequence of this fungal pandemic sweeping through its habitat. It just vanished.
Wow.
Gone.
And that loss, it's not just aesthetic. Think about what amphibians do. They eat vast quantities of insects, mosquitoes, crop pests. Losing them has knock-on effects.
And, like we said, they're indicators. Microbiologist Mark Yakub, one of the researchers we'll talk about, calls them the canary in the coal mine. Their skin is so sensitive to changes in temperature, UV light, water quality. If they're in trouble, it's a sign the whole environment is under stress.
Okay, so this has been a huge problem for a while, but understanding it, that took time, right? The fungus itself wasn't identified as the cause until, 1999?
That's right. Relatively recently, considering how long the declines were noticed.
So what led to this new discovery? The virus.
Well, this comes from a team at the University of California, Riverside, Mark Yakub, who we mentioned, and Professor Jason Stajich. They were doing some pretty fundamental work, actually, just comparing different strains of the blight fungus from different parts of the world, Africa, Brazil, the U.S., like looking at variants of a flu virus.
Standard procedure, sort of.
Pretty much. But while they were sequencing the DNA of these fungal strains, they kept noticing odd bits, sequences that just didn't look like fungus DNA.
Like contamination.
Maybe initially they thought that. But they looked closer, pieced these odd sequences together, and realized they had the telltale signs of a viral genome.
So a virus living inside the fungus.
Exactly. A total surprise. A real aha moment buried in the data.
That's amazing. Just pure discovery science. But why hadn't anyone found this before? People must have looked.
They probably did, yeah. But there are a couple of big hurdles. First, the fungus itself, Bradid, it's notoriously difficult to grow and keep alive in the lab.
Why that?
It has this complex life cycle. Part of it involves a stage called a zoospore, which actually has a little tail, a flagellum, and it swims around. Makes it really tricky to handle and study consistently.
Okay, that makes sense. A swimming fungus stage.
Right. And there's another really crucial reason it was missed.
Which is?
Most viruses known to infect fungi called mycoviruses are RNA viruses. That's what people were likely looking for. But this one, it turned out to be a single-stranded DNA virus. Completely different category.
So they were looking for apples and found an orange.
Kind of, yeah. Looking for the wrong type of genetic signature. Plus, this virus isn't even in all the bee strains they looked at. Only some of them.
Ah, so it's elusive too.
Very, which really highlights why it's so important in biology to study variation. Look at multiple different examples, different strains, not just the most common one. You never know what you'll find.
Okay, so they found this hidden virus. What does it actually do to the fungus? This is where it gets really interesting, right?
It is fascinating and kind of contradictory, actually.
How so?
Well, the research suggests that when the fungus is infected with this virus, it produces fewer spores.
Fewer spores, so it wouldn't spread as easily. That sounds like good news for the frogs.
You think so, right? Fewer spores should mean slower spread. That's the potential upside.
But I sense a but coming.
But
Yeah.
there's a twist. It seems these virus-infected strains, while producing fewer spores, might actually be more virulent.
More virulent? Meaning more deadly. How does that work?
That's the paradox. They might kill the frogs faster, even if they spread a bit slower overall. It's
Yeah.
complicated.
So wait, the virus slows down reproduction but amps up the lethality? That sounds risky if you're thinking about using this somehow?
Extremely risky.
Okay.
It's a perfect example of why messing with complex biological systems is never straightforward. You can't just say, oh, add virus, fix problem. It shows we need a much, much deeper understanding before we even think about intervening. You could easily make things worse.
Definitely. So what are the next steps for the researchers? What do they need to figure out now?
Well, the UCR team is working on cloning the virus. That means making copies of it in the lab so they can deliberately infect fungus strains that don't currently have it.
To study the effects directly.
Exactly. To really pin down what the virus does, they need to answer some key questions. Like, how does the virus actually get into the fungal cells? And crucially, how does it change the fungus's pathogenicity, its ability to cause disease? What are the specific molecular mechanisms at play?
And could those mechanisms be tweaked somehow?
That's the hope down the line. Can we maybe modify the virus or understand its effects well enough to make the fungus less deadly, not more? And there's another layer to the amphibian itself. What about its skin microbiome? The community of bacteria and other microbes living on its skin.
Could some of those microbes offer protection?
Potentially, yes. Are some species better protected than others because of their unique skin microbes? That's another avenue of research.
It's interesting you mentioned some species being better protected, because some amphibians do seem to handle this fungus better than others, don't they?
That's true. There are species that seem relatively tolerant or even resistant.
Like the marine toad, right? The big cane toad.
Arnella marina, yes. Also the American bullfrog, Lithobates catesbianus, and the African clawed frog, Xenopus laevis, which is actually used a lot in labs.
And even some vulnerable species show differences. I think I read about mountain yellow-legged frogs.
Rana muscosa, yeah. Their tadpoles often get infected, but usually only show mild effects. The real mortality hits during metamorphosis, when their whole system, including their skin, undergoes massive changes.
So these resistant or tolerant species, they must hold clues, right?
Absolutely. Studying them, figuring out why they resist, could be just as important as studying the fungus and the virus. Nature might already have some solutions we can learn from.
And looking even broader, does understanding this whole complex situation, fungus, virus, host resistance, have implications beyond amphibians?
Oh, definitely. Think about other devastating wildlife diseases, like white nose syndrome in bats, another fungal disease causing massive die-offs. The lessons we learn here about pathogen-virus interactions, about host immunity, about potential biocontrol strategies, even the pitfalls could be incredibly valuable. It's like building a toolkit for tackling emerging infectious diseases in wildlife, maybe even beyond.
So wrapping this up then, the core idea for you is really this tiny virus discovered almost by accident that offers this, well, colossal glimmer of hope for amphibians worldwide.
Exactly. It's a stark reminder of how interconnected everything is. This microscopic entity could potentially shift the balance in a global ecological crisis. It really underscores the complexity and sometimes the hidden resilience within the web of life.
It really does. A tiny player with potentially huge consequences.
And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Given surprises like this, what other solutions to seemingly impossible problems might be hiding right under our noses, waiting in the natural world if we just look closely enough, maybe in unexpected places?
A really provocative thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.